The transport shuttle descended through the stars toward High Point Station, and Taesung pressed his face against the viewport. The massive orbital structure gleamed against the darkness of space, larger than anything he had ever seen. Somewhere inside those metal walls, his future waited. He just hoped he would survive long enough to see it. The shuttle docked with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Taesung grabbed his single bag and followed the other passengers into the station. Most of them were twice his size. A Draknari walked past, its scales clicking against the floor, its head nearly touching the ceiling. A group of Vortons laughed together, their forearms gesturing wildly as they shared some joke. Taesung kept his head down and tried not to feel small. The Academy Orientation Hall was enormous. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species filled the space with noise and color. Taesung spotted 2 other humans in the crowd and felt a small surge of relief. He made his way toward them. "You must be Taesung," the woman said, extending her hand. She had short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I'm Hyojin. This is Sungmin." Sungmin nodded. He was smaller than Taesung, with glasses perched on his nose and a nervous smile. 3 humans this cycle. That's actually an improvement over last year. "How many were there last year?" Taesung asked. 2. One of them washed out in the first month. A booming voice cut through the crowd. "Cadets, attention!" The hall fell silent. A massive Draknari strode to the center of the room, each footstep echoing like thunder. His scales were deep crimson, and old scars crisscrossed his arms and chest. "I am Instructor Valkor. For the next year, I will transform you from children playing at war into soldiers worthy of the Galactic Defense Force. Most of you will fail. Some of you should not have come at all." His yellow eyes swept across the crowd and landed on the 3 humans. His lips curled back, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Soft-skinned mammals. No claws, no armor, no venom. Short lifespans, weak bones. "Tell me, humans, why are you here?" Hyojin opened her mouth to respond, but Valkor had already turned away. "Rhetorical question. I know why you're here. Your species is desperate to prove you belong among us. You don't. But I will give you the same chance I give everyone else to learn this lesson." Laughter rippled through the hall. Taesung felt heat rise in his cheeks but kept his expression neutral. The orientation continued for another hour. They received their assignments, their schedules, their equipment. Taesung's quarters were in the lowest section of the cadet wing, the oldest part of the station where the environmental controls sometimes failed. Hyojin was 3 levels up. Sungmin was even higher. That first week was brutal. Every morning began with physical training that left Taesung gasping, while other species barely broke a sweat. The Vortons could lift 3 times what he could. The Dragnari could run twice as fast. Even the smallest aliens seemed stronger than the humans. During combat drills, instructors paired him against opponents who outmatched him in every physical category. He lost. Again and again, he lost. After each defeat, he picked himself up, nodded to his opponent, and got back in line. "Why do you keep trying?" A Vortan named Dax asked him one day, genuine confusion in his voice. "You cannot win. Your body is not built for this." "Maybe not," Taesung said, wiping blood from his split lip. "But I'm still here." Dax laughed and walked away, shaking all 4 of his heads. On the 8th day, Taesung saw him for the first time. Kale the Unbroken walked through the training yard, and every cadet stopped what they were doing to watch. He was Vraxi, an insectoid species with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like polished obsidian. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, and his 4 arms moved with liquid grace. Scars covered his armor, each one representing a battle survived. Kale was a legend. He had fought in the Outer Rim Wars, had held a position single-handedly for 3 days against an entire battalion, had received the Star of Valor 5 times. Now he taught advanced combat at the academy, but only to the best cadets. He never spoke to humans. As Kael passed the training yard, every alien cadet bowed their heads in respect. Tae-sung bowed too, but Kael's eyes passed over him, as if he were invisible. The legendary warrior disappeared into the main building without a word. "Don't take it personally," Sungmin said quietly. "I heard he lost his entire squad to a Terran strategic error during the wars. He doesn't trust our species." The real test came 2 weeks into training. Combat simulation exercise. Each cadet was assigned to a mixed species squad and dropped into a hostile virtual environment. The goal was simple: survive until extraction at dawn. Work together. Use your strengths to cover your squadmates' weaknesses. Tae-sung's squad included Dax and 4 other aliens, all from warrior species. The simulation began in a dense jungle environment. Enemies prowled in the shadows, their numbers unknown. The squad moved forward, weapons ready. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Then the ambush came. Simulated enemies swarmed from every direction. The squad scattered, firing wildly. In the chaos, Tae-sung called out coordinates, trying to organize a defensive position. "Why should we listen to you?" Dax shouted over the weapon fire. "You're the weakest link. If we don't work together, fall back." Dax ordered the others. "Leave the human." And they ran. All of them. Within seconds, Tae-sung stood alone in the jungle, surrounded by the sounds of approaching enemies. His heart pounded. His hands shook. The simulation was set to feel real, including pain. He looked at the darkening sky. Dawn was 10 hours away. 10 hours alone in hostile territory with limited ammunition and no backup. Tae-sung took a deep breath. Then he started moving. Not running, but walking with purpose. He found a defensive position near a cliff face. Somewhere he could see enemies approaching. He gathered stones and branches, setting up basic traps and warning systems. He rationed his ammunition, planning for a long night. In the observation room above the simulation, Instructor Valkor watched the feeds with other staff members. Most had already switched to following other squads, but one instructor stood motionless before the screen showing Tae-sung's position. Kael the Unbroken watched the young human work through the night, his compound eyes reflecting the glow of the monitor. The jungle simulation grew darker as night fell. Tae-sung sat with his back against stone, listening. His traps were simple but effective. Branches arranged to crack underfoot, stones balanced to tumble, and alert him to movement. Shadows and sightlines memorized. Every 20 minutes, he changed position slightly, never staying in one place long enough to be predictable. The first simulated enemy patrol came at midnight. 3 figures moving through the underbrush with weapons drawn. They triggered his perimeter trap, and Tae-sung used the distraction to move behind them. He didn't have enough ammunition to fight directly, so he didn't fight at all. He let them pass, then collapsed their exit route with a carefully placed rock slide. Not enough to harm them, but enough to slow them down and make noise that would draw other enemies away from his position. In the observation room, an instructor muttered, "Clever." Misdirection, instead of confrontation. Kael said nothing, but his eyes never left the screen. Dawn came slowly. By the time extraction arrived, Tae-sung was exhausted, covered in dirt, and nearly out of ammunition. But he was alive. The simulation ended, and he found himself back in the debriefing room with his squad. Dax and the others looked fresh. They had reached a safe zone and camped there all night. "Cadet Tae-sung," Instructor Valkor's voice crackled over the speaker. "You were abandoned by your squad. Explain your survival." Tae-sung stood at attention. "I used available resources to create defensive positions and warning systems. I avoided direct confrontation when possible, and used environmental factors to redirect enemy attention." "You ran and hid," Dax said with a snort. "I survived," Tae-sung replied quietly. "That was the mission objective." Valkor's face appeared on the screen. For the first time, the Draknari looked at Tae-sung with something other than contempt. You were the only cadet in your squad to remain alive through the entire night. The others were all killed in the safe zone when an enemy unit found them 2 hours before dawn. Congratulations. You succeeded where your stronger, faster, better armed squad mates failed. The room fell silent. Dax's 4 arms hung limply at his sides. The following day, Tae-sung reported for duty despite bruised ribs and a sprained ankle from the simulation. The medical staff had offered him rest time, but he refused. Hyo-jin found him in the training yard that afternoon. You should be recovering, she said. I'll recover during the next scheduled rest period, Tae-sung replied, practicing his weapon forms. Each movement sent pain through his side, but his hands remained steady. You're going to hurt yourself worse. Maybe. But I won't give them another reason to call us weak. Hyo-jin watched him for a moment, then picked up her own weapon and joined him in practice. The next challenge came quickly. Zero-gravity combat training. The instructors explained the exercise in the preparation room. Fight in 3 dimensions, where up and down become meaningless. Where strength matters less than spatial awareness and creativity. Most species struggled. The Dragnari, built for ground combat, flailed uselessly in the open space. The Vortons, relying on their powerful limbs, found nothing to push against. But humans had trained for space. Humanity's expansion into the stars had required generations to learn how to move without gravity. Tae-sung and Hyo-jin glided through the training sphere with unexpected grace. They used momentum and angles, turning obstacles into launch points. Thinking in 3 dimensions, instead of 2. Sung-min watched from the observation deck, analyzing patterns and calculating trajectories, then sharing his insights with the entire class through the communication system. If you angle your approach at 45 degrees from that wall, you'll have clear sight lines to 3 different positions, Sung-min explained over the comms. Use rotation to adjust aim, instead of trying to stop and restart movement. Other cadets began implementing his suggestions. Success rates improved across all species. Instructors exchanged glances. That evening in the mess hall, Dax approached the human table. Tae-sung looked up, expecting another confrontation. You made me look foolish in the simulation, Dax said, his voice loud enough to carry across the room. You ran like a coward, while warriors fought. Tae-sung set down his fork. I followed the mission parameters. Survive until extraction. I survived. By hiding. By thinking. Tae-sung met the Vortan's eyes. Strength isn't just physical. The enemy in that simulation was stronger than me too, but I'm still here. You, Dax, reached across the table with one of his arms. Tae-sung didn't flinch, didn't move, just waited. The room held its breath. Dax's hand hovered there, then withdrew. You are either very brave or very stupid, human. I have not decided which. Maybe both, Hyo-jin said from beside Tae-sung. Our species specializes in it. Scattered laughter echoed through the mess hall, breaking the tension. Dax returned to his own table. But the confrontation felt unfinished. Late that night, a maintenance worker named Ji-woo found Kale in an observation room that should have been empty. The Vraxi warrior stood before a monitor, watching recorded footage. On the screen, Tae-sung moved through the jungle simulation, setting traps and avoiding enemies. Sir? Ji-woo said carefully. The room is scheduled for cleaning. Kale's mandibles clicked softly. Continue your work. I will not interfere. Ji-woo cleaned quietly, occasionally glancing at the screen. The footage reset and played again. And again. Each time, Kale watched with absolute focus. Finally, Ji-woo's curiosity overcame her caution. Why do you watch this human? Sir, I have heard. You do not trust their kind. Kale was silent for so long that Ji-woo thought he would not answer. Then, without looking away from the screen, he spoke. I am looking for something. What, sir? The truth about what I believe. His voice was quiet, almost to himself. I have judged them based on one failure. Now I must see if that judgment was fair. An alarm shattered the night. Red lights flashed through the station corridors. Tae-sung jerked awake in his bunk as the announcement blared overhead. All senior cadets report to deployment bay immediately. This is not a drill. Pirate raid in progress on mining colony Delta 7. All senior cadets report to deployment bay. Tae-sung grabbed his gear and ran. Hyo-jin and Sung-min joined him in the corridor, their faces pale but determined. They reached the deployment bay within minutes. Hundreds of cadets assembled in formation, while instructors barked orders and distributed weapons. Real weapons, not training simulators. Instructor Valkor's voice boomed across the bay. Pirates have attacked a civilian mining colony. Defense forces are engaged, but they need support for evacuation. You will deploy as support units. Follow your squad leaders. Protect civilians. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. This is real combat. People will die today. Make sure it is not you. Tae-sung felt his heart hammering in his chest. Around him, the other cadets looked excited, eager to prove themselves in real battle. But all he could think about were the civilians who needed help. The shuttles launched into the black, carrying them toward their first real fight. The shuttle ride to the mining colony took 20 minutes. Tae-sung spent the time checking his weapon and trying to calm his breathing. Across from him, Dax looked confident, his forearms already holding various weapons. Hyo-jin sat beside Tae-sung, her jaw set in determination. Sung-min was on a different shuttle with another squad. Listen up, the squad leader barked over the engine noise. Our objective is simple. Get to the civilian shelters and escort everyone to the evacuation ships. Defense forces are engaging the pirates at the main compound. We avoid combat unless there's no choice. Questions? No one spoke. The shuttle touched down near the colony's residential sector. Smoke filled the air. In the distance, weapon fire echoed between buildings. The squad rushed out, moving in formation toward the nearest shelter. They found the first civilians huddled in a basement. Miners and their families, including children. Fear showed in their eyes, across every species represented. Tae-sung helped an elderly Draknari woman to her feet, while Dax used his strength to clear rubble from the exit. Move quickly but stay together, the squad leader ordered. Evacuation point is 3 blocks north. They emerged into chaos. Pirates had broken through the defense perimeter. Explosions rocked nearby buildings. A group of raiders appeared at the end of the street, and the squad leader immediately returned fire. Get the civilians to cover. The squad scattered. Tae-sung guided his group of civilians into an alley while weapons fire streaked overhead. He counted heads. 20 civilians, including 5 children. They looked to him for direction. And he realized his squadmates had continued forward with the squad leader. He was alone with the civilians. A building nearby groaned and collapsed, blocking the path to the evacuation point. Fire spread from its ruins. Tae-sung pulled out his communicator. Squad leader. This is Tae-sung. Route to evacuation point is blocked. Requesting alternate path. Static. Then, find another way. We're pinned down. Cannot assist. Tae-sung looked at the civilians, then at the smoke-filled streets. He accessed the colony map on his wrist display. There was another route, longer but potentially safer. Stay close to me, he told them. We're going around. They moved through service corridors and maintenance tunnels. Tae-sung kept his weapon ready, but used the environment to avoid contact with raiders. When they heard footsteps, they hid. When they saw movement ahead, they changed direction. It was not glory. It was not brave. But every civilian in his care stayed alive. They were halfway to the evacuation point when Tae-sung heard the crying. A child's voice, desperate and terrified, coming from a partially collapsed residential building. He held up his hand, stopping the group. Please. A Vortan woman pushed forward. That's my son. He was supposed to be at school, but he came home early. I couldn't find him before the attack. Taesung looked at the building. Structural supports were failing. Fire crept along one wall. Entry was dangerous. Exit might be impossible. Wait here, he said, moving toward the entrance. Are you insane? Dax's voice came from behind him. The Vorton had appeared with 2 other squad members, looking for survivors. That building could collapse any second. There's a child inside, and going in there could kill you both. Taesung met Dax's eyes. Then I'll be fast. Hyojin appeared beside him, weapon slung across her back. We'll be fast. Sungmin came last, carrying a structural scanner. The western entrance has the most stable supports. We have maybe 4 minutes before critical failure. They didn't wait for permission. The 3 humans entered the collapsing building, while Dax and the others stared in disbelief. Inside, smoke choked the air. Taesung tied cloth around his face and followed the sound of crying. They found the boy trapped under a fallen beam in what had been a living space. He was maybe 6 years old. His small body pinned, but not crushed. Sungmin checked the scanner. The beam is load-bearing. If we move it wrong, the ceiling comes down. How do we move it right? Hyojin asked. Sungmin pointed to 2 support points. We need to shift the weight gradually to those intact supports. But we need to lift and shift simultaneously. I'll lift, Taesung said. You 2 shift. You can't lift that alone, Hyojin protested. I don't have to lift it far. Just enough. Taesung positioned himself, braced his legs, and looked at Sungmin. Tell me when. They worked in synchronization. Taesung lifted with everything he had, muscles screaming. Hyojin and Sungmin shifted the weight distribution. The beam moved incrementally. The boy scrambled free, and they grabbed him. The ceiling groaned. Run! Sungmin shouted. They ran. Behind them, the building collapsed inward with a roar of breaking metal and stone. They burst through the entrance, seconds before the entire structure came down. Taesung's legs gave out, and he fell to his knees, gasping. The Vorton boy clung to Hyojin, sobbing. His mother rushed forward and swept the child into her arms, all 4 of her arms wrapping around him. She looked at the 3 humans with tears streaming down her face. You saved him. You saved my son. Dax stood frozen, staring at the collapsed building. Then at the humans. Something had changed in his expression. The evacuation continued. They reached the evacuation ships as reinforcements arrived. Defense forces had pushed back the pirates. The crisis was ending. Taesung helped load the last civilians onto the transport, then sat heavily against a wall. Pain shot through his side. Blood seeped through his uniform from a piece of shrapnel he hadn't noticed during the rescue. Hyojin saw it first. Medic! We need a medic! I'm fine, Taesung said, but his vision swam. Medical personnel arrived. They patched him up and ordered him to the medical bay back at the station. Taesung wanted to argue, but exhaustion hit him like a wave. They loaded him onto a medical shuttle with other wounded. Back at the Academy Medical Bay, they treated his wounds and put him in a recovery bed. Hyojin and Sungmin visited briefly, both exhausted but unharmed. You did good, Hyojin said simply. That boy is alive because of you. Because of us, Taesung corrected. After they left, Taesung lay in the quiet medical bay, staring at the ceiling. His body hurt, but something else weighed on him. They had saved lives today, but others had died. He had seen bodies in the streets, civilians who hadn't made it to shelter in time. All the training in the world couldn't prepare someone for that reality. The door opened. Taesung turned his head, expecting a medical officer. Kale the Unbroken stood in the doorway. The Vraxi warrior moved silently into the room. He said nothing, his compound eyes studying Taesung. The young human tried to sit up properly, but pain stopped him halfway. Kale made a gesture that clearly meant, Stay down. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Kale reached to his side and drew his personal combat blade. The weapon was legendary, forged in Vroxy tradition, carried through countless battles. Every cadet knew what it represented. Kale placed the blade on the small table beside Taesung's bed. His mandibles clicked once in what might have been acknowledgement. Then, without a word, he turned and left the room. Taesung stared at the blade. In Vroxy culture, a warrior never parted with their personal weapon except as a gesture of profound respect. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched the blade's handle. It was warm. The door opened again. Instructor Valkor entered with a datapad. He saw the blade and stopped. His yellow eyes widened. Do you understand what that means? I think so. Taesung whispered. Then know this, human. Kale has never given his blade to anyone. Not even temporarily. Not in 50 years of service. Valkor looked at Taesung with new eyes. He sees something in you. The instructor delivered his news. The gauntlet trial, the final test of cadet training, was being accelerated. Usually held at the end of the year, it would now take place in 2 weeks. Every senior cadet would participate. Why so soon? Taesung asked. Command wants to assess readiness after today's events. Many cadets froze during real combat. The gauntlet will show who has the mental strength to continue. Valkor paused. The trial takes place on a death world. It is designed to push you to your absolute limits. Most species lose cadets during the gauntlet. Every year, someone does not return. After Valkor left, Taesung lay in the dark, looking at Kale's blade. His body would heal in time for the gauntlet. But would he be ready for something that killed even the strongest species? Outside his window, stars wheeled in the eternal night. Somewhere among them was Earth, his home, where humans had learned to survive against impossible odds for millions of years. That thought gave him comfort as he drifted into sleep. 2 weeks passed in intense preparation. The raid on the mining colony had changed something at the academy. Instructors pushed harder. Cadets trained longer. The upcoming gauntlet trial hung over everything like a storm cloud. Taesung healed quickly. Human resilience surprised the medical staff, who expected him to need more recovery time. He returned to training with Kale's blade secured to his quarters, a constant reminder that someone saw worth in him. He had tried to return it, but Kale refused to take it back. You will return it when you have earned the right to carry it, the Vroxy had said cryptically. Commander Velara, the Academy's head, called a special assembly 3 days before the gauntlet. The commander was Silvari, a species known for their wisdom and fairness. She stood before the assembled cadets with grave dignity. The gauntlet trial is our most sacred tradition, she began. It separates those who have the physical skills from those who have the complete warrior spirit. You will be transported alone to different zones of the death world Kragus Prime. You will have minimal supplies. You must survive for 72 hours. There will be no communication, no backup, no rescue if you fail. The planet itself will try to kill you. When the time expires, extraction shuttles will arrive at designated coordinates. Reach them, and you pass. A chill ran through the assembly. Hyojin, standing beside Taesung, whispered, "Permanently. She means dead." Commander Velara continued. Each species has advantages on Kragus Prime. Each also has disadvantages. The trial is not about who is strongest or fastest. It is about who has the will to survive when everything seems lost. In past trials, we have lost cadets from every species. Strength, speed, armor, weapons. None guarantee survival. Only the complete warrior succeeds. That evening, Dax found Taesung in the training yard. The Vorton had been different since the raid. Less arrogant, more thoughtful. He approached with his 4 arms held in a gesture of respect. "I need to speak with you," Dax said. Taesung stopped his practice. I'm listening. I abandoned you during the simulation. I called your species weak. I mocked your methods. Dax's voice was steady but sincere. I was wrong. When the raid happened, I froze. My warrior training taught me to fight, but not to think. You saved civilians using wisdom I do not possess. Then you entered a collapsing building for a child not of your species. That is true courage. You came back for survivors, Taesung pointed out. You could have stayed safe. Only after I saw what you humans were willing to do. Dax extended one of his hands. I request permission to call you ally. In my culture, we may not be friends, but we can respect fellow warriors. Taesung gripped the offered hand. Ally sounds good. Daun, one of the human medical staff, found Taesung in the mess hall the night before the gauntlet. She was older than the cadets, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. I wanted to talk to you before tomorrow, she said, sitting across from him. I've been working here for 5 years. I've seen many gauntlet trials. I've also seen how different species approach them. What advice do you have? Taesung asked. Remember why humans survived on Earth, Daun said. We were not the strongest predators. We were not the fastest. We had no armor, no venom, no claws. But we had minds that could adapt, and bodies that refused to quit. When other animals sprinted, we jogged after them for hours, until they collapsed from exhaustion. When food was scarce, we ate things other species could not digest. When climates changed, we learned to make tools and shelter. We survived because we were persistent and creative, not because we were powerful. She stood to leave, then paused. The gauntlet will hurt. It will test everything you are, but you come from a species that walked out of Africa and conquered an entire planet using nothing but stubbornness and ingenuity. Don't forget that. The next morning arrived too quickly. Cadets assembled in the deployment bay. Shuttles waited to take them to Kragus Prime. Taesung said goodbye to Hyojin and Sungmin, not knowing if he would see them again. Survive, Hyojin said fiercely. That's all that matters. You too, Taesung replied. The shuttles launched. Through the viewport, Taesung watched Kragus Prime grow larger. The planet was scarred with volcanic activity, covered in dense jungles, marked with frozen wastelands. It looked exactly like what it was, a place designed to kill. They dropped him in a temperate zone that became freezing at night and scorching during the day. Extreme temperature swings. The shuttle door opened, and Taesung stepped out with his minimal supplies. A basic knife, a water container, a thin emergency blanket, and a beacon that would activate when the 72 hours expired. The shuttle lifted off, leaving him alone. Taesung looked around. Dense vegetation surrounded him. Strange animal calls echoed from the jungle. The air felt thick and humid. In 12 hours, this same area would be below freezing. He got to work. First priority, shelter that could handle both extremes. He found a rocky outcropping that would block wind and reflect heat. He gathered materials to insulate it. He located a water source and tested it carefully before drinking. He set basic traps to alert him to predators. In the observation station orbiting Kragus Prime, instructors monitored dozens of screens showing different cadets. Some charged forward with confidence. Others built elaborate camps. A few had already encountered the planet's dangerous wildlife. KL stood before one screen, watching Taesung work methodically through his survival checklist. Beside him, Commander Velara observed the same feed. He does not rush, she noted. Many cadets try to do everything at once and exhaust themselves. Humans are persistence hunters, Kale said quietly. They understand that survival is not a sprint. It is a marathon. The first night was brutal. Temperature dropped rapidly. Taesung huddled in his shelter, wrapped in his emergency blanket, and focused on staying warm through small movements and controlled breathing. He slept in short intervals, never deeply, always alert to danger. Day 2 brought searing heat. Tae-sung rationed his water and stayed in shade during the worst hours. He observed the local wildlife, learning their patterns. When he needed to move, he moved slowly and carefully, conserving energy. Other cadets were not so patient. On the observation screens, instructors watched as a Draknari cadet chased after large prey and exhausted himself. A Vortan cadet built an elaborate camp but used all their energy in construction and had nothing left for hunting. Cadets began to fail, triggering emergency beacons that brought rescue shuttles. But some thrived. Hyojin moved through her zone like a ghost, using stealth and intelligence. Sungmin calculated every action, making no wasted movements, and cadets from various species showed impressive skill and adaptation. Day 2, afternoon. Tae-sung heard something in the jungle. A cry for help. He approached carefully and found another cadet, a species called the Kalari, lying near a stream. The cadet's skin had turned a sickly purple color. Toxin exposure. The Kalari looked at Tae-sung with fading eyes. Drank. Water. Something in it. This was the gauntlet. This was competition. Helping another cadet could mean using resources Tae-sung needed for survival. The logical choice was to move on. Tae-sung knelt beside the Kalari and opened his water container. Drink this. Slowly. We. He spent the next 4 hours treating the Kalari cadet, using his basic medical training and his own clean water supply. He built a shelter for the Kalari to rest in, away from the toxic stream. He shared half his remaining rations. Why? The Kalari whispered. We are competitors. We're also people, Tae-sung replied. In the observation station, every instructor watched this act. The screens showed the interaction from multiple angles. Cadets helping competitors was rare. Cadets sacrificing their own resources to save competitors was almost unheard of. Kale's mandibles clicked softly. Commander Velara turned to him. You knew he would do this. I hoped he would, Kale replied. True warriors protect others, even when it costs them. Day 3 began. The final day. Tae-sung left the Kalari cadet resting and continued toward his extraction point. He was tired, hungry, and running low on water. But he was alive. Then the ground shook. An alarm blared across the planet, audible even in the wilderness. Instructor Valkor's voice boomed from emergency speakers hidden throughout the test zones. Attention all cadets. The final challenge has begun. Simulated extinction event in progress. Massive predators are being released in all zones. Extreme weather will strike in 2 hours. Reach your extraction points or die. This is the final test. Tae-sung ran. Around him, the jungle erupted with roars and screams. He could hear massive creatures moving through the trees. Other cadets' voices called out in panic or determination. The easy part was over. Now came the real test of survival. He used every skill he had: navigation, stealth, speed when necessary, and strategy always. When predators approached, he misdirected them. When obstacles appeared, he found ways around. When exhaustion threatened, he pushed through on pure will. He found 2 other cadets pinned down by a massive predator near the extraction point. Instead of leaving them, he created a distraction using fire and noise, drawing the creature away long enough for them to run. Then he ran too, the beast's roars echoing behind him. The extraction shuttle appeared on the horizon. Tae-sung ran toward it with the last of his strength. Other cadets converged from different directions. The predators closed in. Weather systems darkened the sky. It was a race between salvation and death. Tae-sung reached the shuttle with seconds to spare. He collapsed inside as the door sealed shut. Around him, other exhausted cadets lay gasping. Through the viewport, he watched Kragas Prime shrink away. He had survived the gauntlet. Back at the academy, cadets who had passed assembled in the main hall. Of the 300 who entered the trial, 216 had completed it. Hyojin and Sung Min stood beside Tae Sung, all three humans alive. Many species had lost cadets. Some species had lost many. Commander Velara began to speak about the results, but before she could finish, Kale the Unbroken stepped forward. He moved to the center of the hall and turned to face the assembly. "I request permission to address the cadets," Kale said. Commander Velara looked surprised but nodded. Every eye turned to the legendary warrior. Kale stood in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice that carried across the entire hall. "I have something important to say, and a debt to acknowledge." The hall fell completely silent. Kale the Unbroken rarely spoke in public. When he did, people listened. The Vraxi warrior stood at the center of the assembly, his obsidian armor gleaming under the lights. His 4 arms held in a formal posture that every species recognized as deeply significant. "I have been a warrior for 53 years. Kale began, his voice steady and clear. "I have fought in 7 wars. I have commanded troops from dozens of species. I have seen courage, and I have seen cowardice. I have survived when stronger warriors fell. And I have held prejudices that I believed were justified." He paused, letting his words settle over the crowd. 18 years ago, during the Outer Rim conflict, I commanded an assault unit deep in enemy territory. We were surrounded, outnumbered, and running out of supplies. Our mission was critical to the war effort, but we were trapped. Command sent a rescue unit. That unit was human. Taesung felt his heart skip. Around him, other cadets leaned forward. The human unit consisted of 32 soldiers. Kale continued. They fought through enemy lines to reach us. They held a defensive position for 16 hours against overwhelming force. They shared their ammunition and supplies with my unit. They carried our wounded when my own soldiers were too exhausted to continue. And when enemy reinforcements arrived and the situation became hopeless, the human commander made a decision. Kale's mandibles clicked slowly, a sound of deep emotion in his species. He ordered his unit to hold the line while my unit retreated to the extraction point. He knew it meant death. His soldiers knew it meant death. They did it anyway. All 32 humans died so that 47 of us could live. I was one of those 47. The hall remained frozen in silence. Some cadets had tears in their eyes. Others looked stunned. "I have carried guilt and anger since that day," Kale said. "Guilt that I lived while they died. Anger at the strategic failure that put us in that position. I blamed the entire human species for that failure, even while I owed my life to human sacrifice. For 18 years, I have avoided humans at this academy. I have refused to train them. I have judged them weak and unworthy." He turned to face where the human cadets stood. "I was wrong, and I was unfair. The strategic failure that led to our situation was made by one human commander, not by humanity itself. The sacrifice that saved us was made by 32 individuals who embodied everything a warrior should be. I allowed my pain to blind me to the truth. That ends today. This, I undo." Kyle walked toward Taesung. The young human stood at attention, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. The legendary warrior stopped directly in front of him. "Cadet Taesung, I have watched you since you arrived at this academy. I watched you fail physical tests and continue training. I watched you survive abandonment through intelligence and patience. I watched you risk your life for civilians during the raid. I watched you enter a collapsing building to save a child. I watched you sacrifice your resources to save a competitor during the gauntlet. In you, I see the same spirit that those 32 humans showed when they saved my life." Kale placed one of his hands on Taesung's shoulder. The gesture was formal, ceremonial, and profound. "You do not fight because you are strong," Kale said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "You fight because others need you to be strong. You do not survive because you are powerful. You survive because your spirit refuses to break. You do not win through force. You win through will. These are the qualities of a true warrior. These are the qualities that define your species at its best. He stepped back and raised his voice, so all could hear. In Vraxi culture, we have a sacred bond called Kayesh. It means brother in all but blood. It is not given to family. It is not given to friends. It is given only to those who embody the warrior spirit so completely that they become part of your soul. In my 53 years, I have never given this bond to anyone. Today, that changes. Kael performed a ritual gesture with all 4 of his arms, a complex movement that spoke of honor, respect, and eternal connection. He spoke words in the Vraxi language, ancient and formal. Then, in common language, he said, Te Sung of Terra, I name you Kayesh. I name you brother. Your victories are my victories. Your battles are my battles. Your honor is bound to mine, as mine is bound to yours. Before all these witnesses, I claim you as equal. The implications hit the room like a shockwave. Kael the Unbroken, the most decorated warrior in the Galactic Defense Force, had just claimed a human cadet as his brother. The political, social, and military ramifications were staggering. Tae Sung struggled to find words. I am honored beyond measure, but I have done nothing to deserve such recognition. You have done everything, Kael replied. You have shown me that the spirit I saw in those 32 humans was not exceptional. It was simply human. Your species does not survive because of strength. You survive because of something deeper, something that cannot be measured in physical tests or combat scores. You survive because you refuse to surrender, even when surrender would be easier. He addressed the hall again. Let this be known throughout the Academy and beyond. Humanity has earned respect not through the might of their warriors, but through the strength of their character. They are small. Yes. They are weak by our standards. Yes. But they possess something many warrior species have forgotten. The understanding that true strength comes from protecting others, not from destroying enemies. Commander Velara stepped forward, her expression showing both surprise and approval. This bond you have created, Kael, carries significant weight. You understand the implications? I do, Kael replied, and I accept them fully. The commander nodded. Then let it be recorded. From this day forward, the Academy will reassess its evaluation of human cadets. Their methods will be studied. Their tactical approaches will be incorporated into training. They will no longer be viewed as the weakest species, but as a species with unique strengths that complement our own. Over the following days, everything changed. Other instructors approached Hyojin and Sung Min with genuine interest in human training methods. Dax publicly announced an alliance with the human cadets and encouraged others to learn from them. Cadets who had mocked humans now sought them as squad partners. The Kelari cadet whom Tae Sung had saved during the gauntlet appeared at the human quarters with a gift, a traditional healing crystal from their homeworld. You gave me life when you could have taken victory, the Kelari said. My people will remember this. Requests for interviews came from across the galaxy. The story of Kael naming a human as Kai-Esh spread like fire through military channels. Humanity's reputation began to shift from weakest species to species with hidden strengths. 1 week after the gauntlet, Kael began personal training sessions with Tae Sung. These sessions were open to any cadet who wished to observe, and hundreds came to watch. Kael taught Vraxi combat techniques, but he also learned from Tae Sung, studying human endurance methods and strategic thinking. Your species has fought its way from the bottom of the food chain to the stars, Kael said during one session. Every predator on your world was stronger than you. Every environmental challenge should have killed you. But you survived through adaptation and determination. This is not weakness. This is the ultimate strength. 2 months later, Tae Sung, Hyojin, and Sung Min graduated from basic training with full honors. The ceremony was attended by representatives from dozens of worlds. When Tae-sung received his insignia, Kael stood beside him as tradition dictated for bonded brothers. Commander Velara addressed the graduating class. You have all proven yourselves worthy of serving in the Galactic Defense Force. But I want to speak particularly about the human cadets. When they arrived, many of you laughed. You called them weak. You predicted they would fail. Instead, they have taught us something important. Strength comes in many forms. The warrior who can endure when others quit, who can think when others panic, who can show compassion when others show only force. That warrior is truly strong. After the ceremony, Tae-sung stood with Kael on an observation deck, watching stars wheel past the station viewport. Ships came and went, carrying graduates to their new assignments. Somewhere out there was adventure, danger, and purpose. What will you do now, brother? Kael asked. I requested assignment to Frontier Patrol, Tae-sung replied. Protecting colonies. Responding to emergencies. Using what I've learned to help people. A worthy choice. Kael was quiet for a moment. I have also requested assignment to Frontier Patrol. It seems I am not ready to return to a desk position yet. Tae-sung looked at him in surprise. You're coming to the frontier? Did you think naming you brother was symbolic only? Kael's mandibles clicked. What Tae-sung had learned was amusement. Where you go, I go. Your battles are my battles. Besides, someone needs to watch over you. You have a concerning habit of running into collapsing buildings. Tae-sung laughed. I learned it from humans who ran through enemy fire to save a Vraxi unit. Yes, Kael said softly. Yes, you did. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The future stretched ahead, unknown and challenging. But Tae-sung no longer faced it as the weakest member of his class. He faced it as a graduate of the Galactic Defense Force, as a proven warrior, and as brother to the greatest fighter in known space. The human cadets had arrived at the academy as jokes. They departed as legends. On Earth, news of Kael's bonding with a human sparked celebration. Humanity had proven itself among the stars, not through conquest, but through character. Parents told their children about Tae-sung, about how he represented the best of what humans could be. At the academy, the next class of human cadets arrived to a very different reception. They were still small. They were still physically weaker than most species. But no one laughed. Instead, instructors and cadets alike looked at them with curiosity and respect. The youngest Vraxi instructor approached the new human cadets during their first day and said something that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. I am honored to teach you. I have much to learn from your species. Years later, military historians would point to this moment as the turning point. The moment when humanity stopped being viewed as the galaxy's weakest member and began being recognized for what they truly were. Survivors, adapters, and warriors of a different kind. But in that moment on the observation deck, Tae-sung simply stood beside his brother and felt gratitude. Gratitude for the humans who had sacrificed themselves 18 years ago. Gratitude for the teachers who had challenged him. Gratitude for the friends who had stood beside him. And gratitude for Kael, who had set aside his pain and prejudice to see the truth. The galaxy will see more of humanity now, Kael said, breaking the silence. Your species will surprise them in ways they cannot yet imagine. I look forward to witnessing it, brother. Number 4. Number 4. Number 4. As do I, Tae-sung replied. A new ship arrived at the docking bay, sleek and powerful, marked with the insignia of Frontier Patrol. Their ship, their future. Together, they walked toward it. A human and a Vraxi. Brothers in all but blood. Ready to face whatever the galaxy would bring. Behind them, the Academy continued its eternal work of training warriors. But now, when instructors spoke of strength, they included a new lesson. That sometimes the smallest warrior carries the largest spirit, and that true strength is measured not in the power to destroy, but in the will to protect. The stars waited, full of challenges and wonders. And humanity, once laughed at, now stood ready to meet them as equals. The story of how they got there would be told for generations.